Hello, Simone. Today is going to be a spicy conversation, and it's going to piss off a lot of people, but it is one that needs to be had. Right now in America, we mentioned this on another episode, but Jews need to be paying attention to this. 24% of young people in America today endorse anti-Jewish tropes, right? Like are what you would be seen as anti-Semitic.
Oh,
if
no.
you go to people in their 80s, it's around 5%. So it's 1 in 4 versus 1 in 20. This is a massive generational change.
Wow.
And I would point out here that the sentiment against Jews among youth higher than it is against groups like blacks in the United States now, where it is 17% have anti-black resentment in the United States, where it's 24% anti-Jewish resentment.
That's so funny because I grew up on like 70s, 80s, and 90s content that pretty heavily made fun of Jews. Like I'm thinking about Mel Brooks films, The Princess Bride, all these shows that would have like a ton of like
as safe because nobody actually, when I used
because
to
no one
do,
believed
like,
it. No one
edgy fake humor, like racist humor, I would make racist jokes about Inuits. That was like the core community. Eskimos, make
Oh, right.
make fun of their fake kisses. They don't even know how to love. Like everybody thinks Eskimo jokes are funny because nobody is aware of Eskimo discrimination, at least if you're in the United States. Like it's not something that you are around or you see, so it comes across as funny.
Sure.
The idea of Jews being actually discriminated against in the 80s and the 90s was actually comical. It
right.
was,
So we could make fun of them because we knew that they were fine and they weren't doing anything.
It was so comical that when Jewish directors and producers were making the Star Wars prequels, they literally made this character.
Oh God, yes. No.
My trick's gonna work on me. Only money.
Thought nothing of it.
Yes.
All right. They didn't think this could one day be a problem for our community. And the problem, like the thing that makes this entire conversation so dangerous for the Jewish community long term, like when I'm projecting what happens long term with Judaism, is that somebody comes out there and says, hey, it looks like anti-Semitism is exploding right now. And then the obvious next question is why, right?
Yeah. Yes.
And then the obvious next question is, okay, is it entirely due to some sort of external social contagion that has nothing to do with Jewish communities?
Which could be possible.
Or it could be possible, but that's actually much worse for Jewish communities if that's true. Because it's much harder to change the behavior of people other than yourself than it is yourself.
Yeah, it's preferable. And I'm giving the example because after I brought up a bunch of theories around why there's so much Indian immigrant hate, one person wrote to us, and I'm going to try to put an episode together about it, but they wrote to us and shared fairly abundant evidence indicating that a lot of the Indian immigrant hate is actually astroturfed by Muslim Indians and Pakistanis who just really freaking hate Hindi Indians. And so
Canadians.
That like even like not even so, I mean, there is some job resentment, but like not nearly to the level that you see online.
Yeah.
But like that's an example of something that could be at least in large part external and not caused by internal activity. Because like there's a very large immigrant community here that is Indian, and there's not a lot of like hate about it. People like them.
But I can say this very concretely. So we live outside of Philadelphia. We live in a majority Indian neighborhood. Our neighborhood is 70% Indian. And I have not seen any anti-Indian sentiment amongst any of my neighbors, any of the friends at Octavian's school.
Well, and keep in mind, I ran for office in our area, right? I attended a ton of conservative Republican events. I knocked doors on the houses of hundreds of Republicans who lived here. Only once, because I will say that there was one time when one person said one thing and they're just like, well, I don't like all these kids running around in the streets. And that was it. It was, oh, God forbid that these people actually are happy and have children that run in the streets like I would want my kids to do. And this is like a safe
And keep in mind that you might be like, well, you don't participate with the edgy conservative groups. No, we participate with the edgy. We're like friends with the people who ran a lot of the Trump campaign stuff. And as we're known as like right-wing influencers, we get and edgy right-wing influencers, we get invented to the edgy parties where people make racialist jokes and stuff like that, even just to be edgy.
Anyone wanted to say something about resenting Indian immigrants in our Indian immigrant heavy community, they would have told me immediately, because all of the like attacks made against me were like, look at this evil racist woman. So they would have told me, because they would have thought that like the rumors were true. So I want to illustrate that anyway. So, but this does not seem to be something where the Jew hate is endogenous. Or it does seem to be.
But the side point I wanted to make to the Indian comments is I do think that there is actual Indian resentment in certain pockets of the United States. I just don't think it's in our region very much.
Yeah.
And it's important, and especially in Canada. There are actual communities where it is normal, but Canada is getting a completely different type of Indian immigrant than we're getting here.
Well, and I will add that I think especially among tech workers, where they see that like people are actually just hiring
Indians
they're firing qualified American citizens and hiring honestly less qualified Indian immigrants. There is obvious resentment. But we need
regulations around that. That's a whole other thing that we can get to in another video, where you could go watch the video where she crashes out about Indians, because she goes on a 30-minute rant about all of the valid complaints people have about Indians. But in this episode, we're talking about Jews, Simone. Just to
great, just out of the frying pan into the fire. Let's go.
If we often talk about the trans community, right? And I'm like, basically, in the group that has ended up becoming the new right, many or the majority of whom used to be leftists, we sort of originally approached the trans thesis with the idea of, okay, we can give this community some additional rights so they can do their weird whatever thing that they want to do. And so long as they don't abuse those additional rights, it's fine, right? And of course, if they did abuse those additional rights, that would be punished within the community first and most aggressively.
Right, because that would threaten their sovereignty and rights and acceptance.
Exactly. And when we saw that the opposite was happening, that the community kept from the most institutional levels, from the highest levels of the community, protecting their worst actors and going out of their way to protect their worst actors, it then creates a situation where any community that's abutting them has to attack the entire community to deal with the negative externality of that community's worst actors. If I'm going to word this a different way, okay, let's suppose we're not talking about trans people or Jewish people here. We're talking about blurbs and turbs, okay? These are two groups. And some blurbs sometimes grape little turbs, okay? And so a turb mob comes over to the blurbs, right? And they've all got pitchforks, and they say, that man right there raped one of our children, and we can prove it. And then the blurb leader comes out and says, if you want to pull him out of our community and put him in a prison, you need to go through all of us and put us all in prison. Now, if I'm a blurb who's not that particular elected leader, I'm likely like the evilest person in that room right now. The person I'm most terrified of is that leader, right? It's not even the mob, because that leader is turning me and the entire community into grist over something that obviously, if somebody in our community is acting like a bad actor and we're preventing them from being punished, we make our entire community a negative externality to anyone we're around. And recently, on multiple occasions, the Jewish community has done this in spades. And when I say in spades, I mean to an attempt that is so egregious that I would ask, and like, if I know we have Jewish friends, I'm gonna put together a plan to stop this, because Jews used to have cultural institutions that were entirely designed to stop exactly this phenomenon. Okay, But these cultural institutions basically failed in the, I want to say 1600 or 1700s. Oh, what happened after the 1500s for Jews? Oh, is that when pogroms started picking up? All I'm saying is there might
What
be
existed before then that stopped this? What is this magical dance?
so there were multiple Jewish institutions that when a Jew would scam or go out of their way to hurt non-Jews that were living alongside the Jewish community, the Jewish community would heavily financially punish them, shun them, and expel them.
Wow.
And that is very, very useful thing to do.
To give an idea of how severe these were, we have recordings of Jews for minor, and note this wasn't just for major things. It's noted that for even minor scams or misrepresentations to Gentiles, something was applied to them. It's a Jew word. I don't know what it means exactly. Jews will know it, but it meant that that person's kids were not even considered marriable. So it didn't just apply to you, it applied to your entire genetic line. So just with some research in front of me here, these institutions were called Kehillot and Beit Din, or in English, communal councils and rabbinic courts. They were specifically active between 1000 and 1750 CE. And if you do an analysis, so you look for pogroms, this is mass Jewish killings, pre-1750, you do have some, and some that were very large, like the Kaminsky uprising. If you just, on average, look at pogroms per year and how severe those pogroms were during that period, and then contrast it with the period after these institutions had collapsed, you see enormously more. Like it's an order of magnitude more in terms of violence and frequency that you had pogroms after these institutions had collapsed. So just an AI's thoughts on this. Pre-1750, violence was often tied to existential crises, plagues, crusades, uprising, with fewer but sometimes larger single events, e.g. Kaminsky rivaled or exceeded many later waves in raw death toll. Post-1750 saw more frequent, repeated waves of pogroms, hundreds per wave, and this, culminating with the Holocaust, right? So these institutions actually appeared to serve their role. They appeared to significantly reduce anti-Semitism. And the Jewish community has, ever since they collapsed, been demonstrably, I think, weakened in their ability to operate. And the reason I put so much emphasis on you used to have this technology is Judaism as a religion, if they want to adopt something, they can't just go up and be like, I have a new idea about how we should do something. If they can say, here's how we used to do it, look at the pogroms per year when we did this, look at the pogroms per year after we did this, that can be pretty persuasive because you have both a mathematical, a historic, and a religious argument for reinstituting these.
But today, you have an instance where the two of the big instances that we're going to go over that are really emblematic of this is major YouTube streamer ends up covering a community of
Orthodox Jews living, I think, somewhere in New York City.
Yes. Tyler Olivier's videos. So this guy goes along, he goes to various groups that are doing bad things, immigration fraud, throwing poo at each other in India, which is just like a cultural
and
festival.
even just general crime in New York that is not specific to a group.
Right, but the point is that he has targeted other specific sub-ethnic groups in the past for things that are a group doing a local traditional festival around like feces throwing is far more racially inflammatory because that's just a traditional festival that's really only hurting that community potentially. Then
it's strengthening their immune system. It looked fine.
Yeah, welfare fraud by Orthodox Jewish communities in New Jersey, right? Like this, the fraud that he was pointing out has been historically documented. It's been documented in multiple Orthodox Jewish communities. It is, even in this case, extremely well documented. Like this is not a going out there and promoting some sort of stereotype or something like this. This community is acting as genuine bad actors in a way that is hurting the quality of life, like our economic system. The people around them are suffering because of the way that this community is abusing the US tax system and welfare system. And we'll go into other instances of this, but in this instance, what was so wild about this is the ADL. You do not get more mainstream of a Jewish organization then the ADL.
Now, this was news to me. I didn't think the Anti-Defamation League was Jewish per se. I thought they were just broadly progressive or not.
I've always thought of them as a predominantly Jewish organization.
Really?
What's the other Jewish organization? Let's see if they also went out against him.
I don't know. I don't know of any big Jewish nonprofits aside from, I don't know, whatever foundation made the Holocaust museums possible, or whatever foundations. I didn't think there were like Jewish-led charities that had big leading names.
It's the ADL.
Really? It's just known for being Jewish?
The mainstream Jewish quote-unquote protection nonprofit is the Anti-Defamation League, the ADL.
Okay, so that's like the main organization famous for fighting anti-Semitism explicitly.
Yes, the official mission of the ADL is to stop the defamation of Jewish people and secure justice and fair treatment for all.
Oh, okay. I didn't know. Sorry.
So the ADL comes out, attacks him, and he is immediately deplatformed from platforms like Patreon.
Gosh, after everything he's done, he's posted things that are inflammatory, so it's not like this was just too spicy for people. Wow.
No, it was that the Jewish community, when he spotted real fraud, went out and this is now, if you're a Jewish person, the Jews at the ADL that did this, they are an existential threat to the Jewish community. Because what they have now said is, as long as Jews have cultural and political power in the United States, we will not allow you to punish or even notice or talk about bad actors within our community. But this wasn't the only instance recently. Another egregious instance is there was $33 million of healthcare fraud by an Orthodox Jewish individual. Obviously, like, we freak out when the Somalians do this. Like, Trump and the administration should be freaking out when an Orthodox Jew does this, right?
It doesn't matter who you are. Any form of, especially fraud using people's taxpayer money.
This fraud was killing people. Old people were dying because of this fraud. This is like on record, okay? This guy was a monster. And that is not disputed even by the organizations that attempted to defend him. But a large organization that we'll be going into.
Note, not a fringe or extremist Jewish organization either. This is the mainstream Chabad Jewish organization for protecting Jewish prisoners.
That's entire purpose is to fight for freedom for Orthodox Jewish individuals, convince the Trump administration to give this person a pardon. Not because they do not think that his actions led to people's deaths, not because they do not think that he stole from the American taxpayer through fraud, but because he's an Orthodox Jew.
Wow.
This is really existentially bad for the Jewish community.
That is bad. I had no idea. That's terrible.
That is
really bad.
That's terrible.
If you are wondering how they could conceivably signal that this was an okay thing to do, the core argument that the administration made when releasing him is that he didn't personally financially benefit from his fraud, that it was mostly to keep a failing business alive, which is factually untrue. We know he stole at least $5 million personally as a ghost salary. I think the argument is that he had to pay it back in fines or something after he was caught, but it's like, yeah, but he intended to steal it, right? And there's still people fighting for money from this. So no, it's not that everyone has been reimbursed or anything like that, but that most of the fraud was done to try to protect a failing business that had overextended. But that doesn't, if you have a failing business, especially a hospital that's caring for elderly and infirmed individuals, and you, because of the way that you are conducting fraud to try to keep that alive, are leading to people's deaths and for people suffering at a large scale, you need to let that fail. Like, not being able to let your business fail in committing fraud at this scale is not an ethical thing to do. especially while stealing to the tune of $5 million from the failing company, exacerbating the problems. Like this picture of somebody who just let things get a bit out of hands doesn't work when you consider the $5 million that he stole during this process that's on record. And people are like, oh, he had an external accounting group that was handling the fraud on his behalf. I mean, it's shown in court records. He knew and he pleaded guilty to knowing the fraud was happening. But in addition to that, like, I'm actually okay. Like, if somebody was like, look, employees were doing this, he just then wanted to protect their jobs. Okay, fine. I have helped cover for my own employees moral lapses in the past. As a boss, it's something that just happens and comes up. And if that was what he was going through, then I would understand. But that doesn't explain the $5 million that he took out in ghost salaries, and that's what we know of. That's the fraud we were able to prove, $5 million. That requires active action on his behalf, not an external accounting firm or anything like that. Like, I'm trying here, okay? But this was just a bad actor who didn't care about the lives that he destroyed. And people are like, well, he's old. He would have died in prison. Good. This is why we have a prison system, right? I want the Somalians who do this stuff going to prison. I want Jews who do this stuff to go out of prison. It shouldn't matter what community someone is from. And the simple effing optics of this, that Chabad, an organization that is staffed by otherwise sane, intelligent people, knowing the sentiment in America right now against the Jewish people, growing in negativity, knowing what a hot button issue because of the Somalian fraud stuff that we're dealing with, because of Nick Shirley's reporting, fraud of exactly this type is, that they would go out of their way to almost pathologically attempt to free an obvious bad actor and do it successfully. Did no one in the organization stop to ask, what are the optics of this? And I think that, well, apparently not. And that was because there was no institution for causing or creating any sort of reward mechanism for asking that, because it doesn't matter to them if they do an action that on the whole hurts the Jewish people if it helps their status within their circles of Jewish society, which this did. And reinstating these old courts would allow that. And I think that this is really important for individual, like the Jews who are hearing this and want to yell at me for this. Right now, these individuals did not ask, how is this action going to reflect on the way that broader Jews are treated within society, anti-Semitism more broadly? The question in their head is, how does this affect my standing within my circle of Jewish society? And that's really bad that that's the case, but it can be fixed. Also, another externality that Jews should think of when they're thinking about the importance of building a system to address these issues is how something like this affects non-Jews who defend the Jewish community. When we saw Charlie Kirk near the end say something like, I'm thinking about turning against the Jewish community or having Candace Owens gone on because I am sick of, after I do X, Y, or Z to defend them, then this comes out after me, then I get accused of X, Y, or Z. I think that, like, there isn't an internal thinking of, we Jews have people outside the Jewish community. Like, Simone and I are often accused of being overly pro-Jewish. The reason we're pro-Jewish is because we're pro-strengths and Jews are out competing other groups in many fields, right? Like, we like groups that do well and are technologically and economically productive, especially high fertility groups. Like, there is a existential reason we are pro-Jewish, which is very instrumental. If they weren't those things, then we would be anti-Jewish. It's not like for some biblical reason or something like that, or even because I like individual Jewish people. There's a lot of groups where I have a lot of friends from that group, but I still think in aggregate that group is an economic and technological drain on the global world. But the point I'm making here is, take somebody like Simone and I, who get flack. We do burn some of our credibility when we are seen as defending Jewish interests. And then we see something like this happen. Mainstream organizations like the ADL and Chabad going out of their way to protect bad actors within Jewish communities instead of working to address them themselves. because then people who have heard me defend Jewish things in the past, they go, Malcolm, you see, this is proof that you're wrong about helping the Jews, defending the Jews, seeing the Jews as a group that we can have as good actors in American society. And it makes me look stupid. And it makes me and all of the other non-Jewish people who defend the Jewish community less likely to do it in the future. The externalities from actions like this are manifold. And for those viewers on the other side who hold a more anti-Semitic sentiment and are upset at us for always coming off as overly phileo-Semitic, keep in mind, we are willing to criticize. We have a number of episodes that are quite critical of Jewish community and history. Our support for the Jewish community, as we have said, is instrumental to my goals for civilization. And if actions of that community make it look like that is no longer the case, then my opinion changes. If portions of that community grow fast, because there are definitely portions of the Jewish community that are extremely low technology, extremely hostile to outsiders, and very high fertility, if those portions end up becoming the dominant Jewish population or controlling Jewish institutions, then obviously I would not continue to take actions that are as supportive to the wider Jewish people. I'm not like who was it, Ted Cruz or whatever, who's like, oh yeah, I'll support Israel, whatever, because the Bible told me to. I'm like, no, it's useful for my goals as things are right now. But if things change, then it may no longer be useful to my goals.
And so many Jews are going to go, because every time we do a video like this, they come into the comments and they say something like, because they feel like this is a normal thing to say when somebody says something like this or brings up topics like this, that I am being anti-Semitic by saying this stuff. You are the problem. You are the reason why now 25% of young people have decided that they are anti-Semitic. Okay? Because the dominant culture, like different cultures react to injustices in different ways. But the dominant culture, especially within the right in the United States, when they see somebody calling out genuine bad action and then another person attempting to silence them by saying something like, you're being racist, or you're being transphobic, or you're being homophobic, or you're being anti-Semitic, because wokes use that for so long. So we developed cultural technologies against that, right? Like this is one of the core things that has changed with the new right, is people can no longer go to us and say, oh, you like anime? That's nerdy. I'm like, suck it. Or you that's degenerate. Or that's against like people like, oh, how do you police behavior without being able to shame people for this or that? It's like, we do not allow that at all within our communities anymore, because wokes then grabbed that social technology and realized they could use it, right? They could reclassify what these categories were and they could use it. And that a better way to promote good actions is through modeling it, right? Like in the way I treat my wife, in the way I live, in the way I'm having kids, in the way I try to interact with others. I try to model good behavior. And that is how because people are like, oh, how could you ever have good behavior unless you shame degeneracy? And it's like, look, I understand that used to work when we were more culturally uniform, but wokes figured out how to use that. And so we haven't been using that as a cultural technology for a while. In fact, we've been reflexively being like, ew, what a loser. Like anybody who attempts to shame people along these categories. Jews are, because it worked for them for a long time, still reflexively attempting to use this social technology. And what they do not see is it is isolating them from the one group and from the wider, like of the groups in the United States, the group that is most open to one, allying with Israel and helping Jews within the United States is the new right. Just like without, like wokes, when you see Jewish students running from people on campus and locking themselves in a library because they're afraid of being beaten up, these are leftists who are doing this. You are aware of this. Like the leftists regularly host rallies in the United States where they say from the river to the sea. They want you exterminated, right? Like this is not, you have one group you can go to, right? That you can form an alliance with and is open to that alliance, right? And that group is the wider New Right Coalition. But we're also not effing stupid. One, you come to us with this, oh, you're being anti-Semitic, when clearly what I'm saying is not anti-Semitic. This is factual evidence, or clearly, what Tyler Olivier was saying when he made his video is not anti-Semitic, right? This was like clear evidence, right, of this stuff. And Jews know this stuff is happening. No, they're not fucking stupid. Jews know about the fraud in Orthodox Jewish communities.
Yeah.
Right? And you could be like, well, we have trauma because of a genocide. It's like a lot of groups have had genocides against them. Okay. None of those groups come to me and attack us for saying, oh, you're anti-our, because we attack all the groups on this. We have anti-Quaker videos. We have anti-Catholic videos. And the only group that regularly reflexively freaks out, and it is this reflexive freak out
Yeah.
that is causing the drift even within the right. And if you look at the political breakdown, you can see the anti-Semitic sentiment is growing in the right at the same rate it's growing in the left, right? But ideologically, we're not marching in the streets saying from the river to the seas yet, right? Is to be aware where we are with you. I think Jews, because they are used to perceiving themselves as having an alliance with the left, which is just not going to work going into the future.
Mm-hmm.
They listen to leftist criticism about stuff like Gaza, about stuff like the war in Iran. When I don't care about this stuff, you're helping us with this fucking good. Like, I kill him, whatever, right? Like, I feel like the woman from South Park.
Really? That's great.
You mean you don't mind?
No, I hate
Gaza.
you. Go right ahead and plow down this whole fucking thing.
That's swell.
That's the way I feel about all of that. But when you set up communities in the United States and actively scam our tax system and kill our elderly people, and then when our justice system attempts to do its things, or when our citizen reporters attempt to do the just thing and attack them, then how can I say that this is tolerant? This is no longer a minority Jewish position. This is not a minority. Like, the people on the right will sometimes be like, oh, they randomly bombed some old church in whatever country. It's like, yeah, it was in a freaking Muslim majority country. There were like no Christians there anymore, whatever, right? Like, I do not care about that. That population had already wiped out the Christian population there. So I'm wondering where all the Christians went over the past 20 years. Maybe I'm okay with them being bombed a little bit. Or they'll be like, oh, look at this video of Jews spitting on Christians. It's like, and I can find videos of Christians spitting on Jews, right? Like, there's plenty of Christians who hate Jews. That doesn't mean that our two people cannot be allied with each other. But the very centers of Jewish power acting in this way, that does prevent a meaningful alliance. As well as Jews in stuff like the comments under this video saying this is anti-Semitic to say, that does prevent a durable alliance.
And don't give me, oh, this is a woke Jews problem. We are discussing two organizations that have done this recently. One of them is the ADL. Okay, maybe the ADL. But the other is a Chabad charity, okay? If you are unfamiliar with who the Chabad are, they are an Orthodox Jewish group. Okay, they are, I think, the most mainstream, sort of accepted by wider society, Orthodox Jewish group.
Because the first people who should be going after the people who go into the comments and be like, this is anti-Semitic, should be other Jews, right? Because that hurts the Jewish community. That is the person who says, when you come after bad actors and obvious bad actors, documented bad actors, I'm going to defend them.
Well, so my impression of when I think about comments I've heard from Jewish friends about groups like these is they're like, oh, that's this subgroup, they're not mine. And I think there is this problem of Jewish communities being very sort of disconnected and balkanized to a certain extent and not centrally governed, of course. So it's not like there's some Vatican that could be like, we disavow this. This is wrong. It's more like, well, they're this sect that's entirely sovereign and we have no control over them. I mean, I guess what you're saying is,
and this is you know how you deal with that.
How?
So there's really a few solutions to this from the perspective of Jewish populations.
Okay.
Solution number one is create genuine group differentiation. If somebody was to go to me, because I regularly do this on air, criticize the Vatican, and they were to say, well, you're a Christian, like, how do you criticize the Vatican? Or how do you criticize like this Protestant sect or that Protestant sect? It's like, I'm not that sect. I don't like that sect. I think that sect is an act like, and people do not confuse me with those sects.
Do you not think that Jewish friends of ours have done that to be like, that's
absolutely
X group?
Not. Absolutely not.
Yeah.
This is a huge problem that Jews have. And there is a way around it, but it is a huge problem. When in, like, suppose a Unitarian Universalist, a branch of Christianity, acts as some super bad actor, as they often do, pushes some woke nonsense, right? And nobody would think of comparing us techno-Puritans or like evangelical Protestants with
clearly
that
not.
group. Because we would say that group is heretical. That group is not like us. That group is not one of us. And it wouldn't make sense to compare us, right? Whereas Jews, they fastidiously do not do this. They say, hey, even if you don't follow the practices of Judaism anymore, even if you left, even if you blah, 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 you're still Jewish if you are matrilineally Jewish. This creates a major, major problem. And even worse, if you're like to a Jew, right, like an Orthodox Jew, right, like a Reformed Jew is still a Jew, right? To an evangelical Protestant, a Unitarian Universalist is not a Christian. And this is why they don't get blamed as much, because the Jewish community themselves, like the people who are in this video, who are going to be claiming, oh, Malcolm, you're being anti-Semitic, the vast majority of them are probably going to be Reformed Jews, because those are the people who react this way the most. Yet they are protecting an Orthodox Jewish community. These two communities are not the same community. It is the active lack of being willing to split and internally criticize that is causing ultra-Orthodox Jews to be blamed for what woke Jews are doing in Hollywood that have like culturally very few similarities to them. And it's what's causing woke Jews in Hollywood to be blamed what ultra-Orthodox Jews are doing in Israel, right? Like, but I actually would not advise the Jewish community to remove this tendency within Judaism. It has a number of positive externalities for the Jewish community, basically making it very hard for them to permanently split and allowing them to recombine whenever they want. You can look our video on why don't Jews have guns? It goes really deep into Jewish culture and why it is particularly resilient. And this is one of its big superpowers. And you couldn't even do it if you were a Jew. Like even if you were a Jew and you tried to create like a splinter group of Judaism, it's just so embedded in the Jewish mindset that all Jews are Jews that it would eventually recombine. And in the mind of the general public, it wouldn't happen. There's the second cultural strategy. How do most groups prevent this? How did Jews prevent this, historically speaking?
Right.
Well, they have either cultural traditions or legislative bodies for punishing people within their communities so that they can, like if within the Jewish community, there was some sort of a council or something like that that could pass judgment on high profile individuals, like individuals within the ADL, offer some kind of excommunication or financial fines or some other punishment that shows we, the Jewish community, do not approve of this behavior. We do not approve of defending these individuals or what these ultra-Orthodox communities are doing. And keep in mind, how did my cultural tradition handle this historically? Because it's actually well documented. How did backwoods people handle historically when somebody in our culture was making themselves a pest to people of surrounding cultures? They typically tortured and killed them and left their bodies somewhere public. So everybody knew.
Wait, what is it? The backwoods people in America did this?
Oh, yeah, they would. I mean, this is what like the regulators were, right? Like
regulators? Is this some formal societal term?
Yeah, they would have basically groups of young men would get together if somebody had gone out and like raped a girl or something like that, and they would torture them and kill them and leave them hanging from a tree. And everyone would see. And everyone would be like, I guess I'm not going to do that again.
And I think this is one of those places where you can see my cultural biases where they may clash with some other cultural groups we have in the right-wing coalition show. Like when the United Healthcare CEO was killed, my first reaction was, oh, well, that's good, right? Like the legal system didn't work. So, now we do step two. I'd also note here that this idea of communities policing themselves is actually very normative. Most communities do the exact opposite of this. Instead of attempting to protect their own bad actors, they make a point of going out of their way to punish their own bad actors. So take, rather than a cultural community, let's talk about like the wider YouTube streamer community, right? We have a bad actor like Johnny Somalia. And Johnny Somalia is going to high trust countries and going around and effing with people. And pretty much the entire streamer community has been on board with doing everything that we in the wider community could to get this guy locked up. Okay? When he was arrested in Korea, the community donated a legal fund for his prosecution. All right? Sent people over there to help with that fund, to help make sure he saw jail time, right? This is what Jews should be doing when a Jew acts like a bad actor, not the exact opposite.
Now, I'm not saying that that Jews need to go as hard. Jews didn't do that historically. They did the Jewish version of that, which is taking away someone's money, which actually, yes, that is historically how these Jewish courts worked.
No, you must be describing though Jewish communities who are living in close proximity, like an insular Jewish community, and that is still what exists now. I think the problem is that an entire Jewish community is being criticized for exploiting the US government, essentially.
No.
For leveraging open loopholes.
Welfare fraud is rampant among ultra-Orthodox Jews in the United States. Both welfare and housing fraud is very widely reported, is very rampant.
Okay, can I steelman this?
Okay, go.
Like, they're only having the most Jewish response, right? What is Judaism? But like, okay, here's the law, right? And then they're like, great, okay, how am I going to work around this? Oh, I'll just put like a piece of metal thread around things, or golden thread, or I will, switch around this lampshade to work this way. Or, oh, I'm not allowed to let my hair show. Well, then I'll just wear a wig over my hair, and then that's going to be fine. I totally
understand what you're saying.
And so what they're doing with the welfare fraud here is they're like, oh, so the government has these rules. Okay, so the government's giving this money to these organizations. Well, then I will run the organization and you will buy from it, and then we will all benefit from it. Like, they're just leveraging laws, and they just need to close these loopholes because the whole reason they exist, Simone, is they're faulty.
I know you're saying this, but you're not thinking in the wider cultural context. I have even promoted the idea of, I'm okay if you can screw over the system and get away with screwing over the system. That is completely fine. Like,
yeah, shame on the system.
Shame on the system. But if you get caught or shamed for exploiting the system, and then, because this is the system working as it's supposed to. The guy who got arrested, the Jewish guy who got arrested, that was the system working as intended. The community that was being shamed by the YouTuber, that was the system working as expected.
Yeah.
But then when your community says, oh, we got caught, the system tried to prevent our fraud, and then you attack the agents of the system that tried to shut you down, now you make it the entire community an existentially damaging thing to have operating within that system.
That's true. It's a bad strategic move. Yeah.
It's not a bad, it's a move that they can get around. So Judaism has like high councils of rabbis and stuff like that they still use
that exist between among sects.
Yes.
Oh, and I didn't know that.
What's even more important is that these high rabbi councils and everything like that, the people who are going to listen to them the most are the ultra-Orthodox Jews who have the biggest problem with these sorts of frauds. So if they said, look, anti-Semitism is exploding right now, and where anti-Semitism matters most is in the right, because the right's the community that is looking like it's allying with Israel over Europe. It looks like it's the long-term natural ally for the Jewish people. If it's exploding within our community because of like an existential thing that there just doesn't, like, Jews, what would you do if there was a subpopulation living within Jewish communities, regularly screwing you over, and when you tried to do anything about it, they rounded the doors and tried to prevent you from doing anything about it? It's like, I'm pretty sure we know what you would do, right?
Yeah,
because we've seen it before.
Good. Yeah.
You deal with it, and I respect you for dealing with it. But know that I hold myself to those same standards. Right? And you would want allies that held themselves to those same standards. And this isn't, again, Jews used to do this, which we're going to go over in a second. This isn't even like you as a Jew could say, let's go to one of these councils and promote the creation of some Jewish body meant for handling exactly this kind of thing. And I'm
Right.
going to note, this is actually existential for Judaism to survive. And
No,
people
I
can
mean,
say,
I totally get what you're saying. I just don't really know how to navigate around it. If, for example, so here's this community, like what, I guess what you want the rest of all the Jewish communities to do is be like, we're not with them. We condemn their actions. They should not do this. It's wrong. And of course, certainly not censor anyone who's bringing to light what they're
no,
doing.
what they need to do is they need to be punishing and have a system for punishing, but also just in their own lives, socially punish the individuals who attempt to use the anti-Semitism card when something is clearly not anti-Semitism.
Okay, that's fair. Because I was like, I don't know how you think this community, for example, that was
No, the bigger problem than this community, than the
Mhm.
fraud of this community, is the individuals who are trying to stop the system from working as it's supposed to.
yeah.
They are the people who spent millions of dollars getting Trump to pardon a guy who had killed people. Right?
Yeah.
They are the people for a type of fraud that everyone on the right is pissed off about right now. You can't
Yeah.
just let a guy sit in jail for doing fraud. Like, why is that such a problem? Right? Like,
Yeah.
they're not even
Yeah.
denying that he did it.
Yeah.
And let's go over, because I want to go over like what the ADL is saying here. The point I'm making is the bigger problem isn't the individual bad actors. It's the larger community level organizations like the ADL
The meta
attempting to
conversation.
protect the bad actors from the system working as intended.
Right.
So
Yeah.
what
Well,
did-
and honestly, it goes against at least my like stereotypical outsider take of Jewish law. Like, if the game is work within the rules to your best advantage, make the rules work for you, but then you get caught, then you lost the game. You need to be better at playing the system. They weren't
Yeah,
good
you got
enough. They got
caught with your
caught.
hand in the
So like,
in the
my
candy
bad.
bowl.
I'm gonna have to try again. And the reaction isn't, oh no, definitely don't catch me. Like, that's not how it works. You have to follow the rules. That's the whole point. You follow the rules.
Well, and the thing is, and the reason I keep pointing out is that Judaism used to have systems for dealing with this.
I see.
This is the law of Judaism. These institutions collapsed a few centuries ago, right?
Mhm.
Like, that doesn't mean that they are not historically accurate Judaism, right?
Mhm.
And because of that, if you are a stickler Orthodox Jew, and we have a lot of Orthodox Jewish fans of this, you can work your way up. And we have a number of Orthodox fans who are Jewish Orthodox Jews who are in positions of authority within these communities. Do something about this. Like, advocate for recreating one of these institutions. Because if you don't, and the reason I said that this is so existential for Judaism is it's not just existential for Judaism working alongside right-wing culture in the United States. It is existential for Judaism because we are your best long-term ally, right? Like, we created the state of Israel basically, and we funded it up until this point, and we regularly help you guys out, right? Like, it is really stupid to piss us off. But in addition to all of that, if you cannot deal with this, Israel itself is going to collapse.
Mhm.
Because right now, ultra-Orthodox communities in Israel scam the state of Israel, right? And
Oh
you can-
yeah, and that is a huge problem within the state of Israel itself, for sure.
and they are using that to outbreed their more economically and technologically
That's
productive.
a really, I didn't even think
neighboring
about that. Yeah, that's like an already known and existing and very serious problem that does eventually need to be dealt with within the own Jewish community.
And worse than that, not only are they economically and technologically unproductive, but they don't even fight in your wars.
Mhm.
They send your economically and technologically productive people to die to defend your land. They are scamming you. That is, in any other country, we would call that a scam. Okay. Now you can say, well, it's not technically a scam because they're following all the rules. That thinking, like Simone said, like a Jew, like follow. In any other system, we'd be calling a group that was doing that scamming the system. We'd be like, this seems like a problem. They're a negative externality on society. They disproportionately are involved in scams and welfare and living off the state, and they don't even fight in wars for us. Like, what are we even doing here, right? That community, because of their birth rates, is eventually going to make Israel irrelevant, right? Like, Israel with its bright futures, Jews with their bright futures because of this homeland of Israel that they've been able to sort of create as a fortress nation, it has that bright future because of its technologically and economically productive, high fertility population. But if that population is drowned out in a democracy, because it is a democracy in Israel, by a population that doesn't share their values, that's existentially threatening. And note here, I'm not talking about all Haredi Jews, all ultra-Orthodox Jews. Many are sane and understand the problem. But it is a good chunk of them. And if you could create a religious institution that was designed with exactly these two issues in mind, how do we prevent this one population in Israel from eventually tanking the state, with the understanding that it's in that population's best interest as well? Like, I've even talked to Jews in this population just about the math that they are well aware of how effed they are when they become the majority of Jews in Israel. Right? Like, they're like, oh, well, it's good for this reason and good for this reason. But obviously, we're going to have major military problems when that happens. We're going to have major economic problems when that happens. And they're like, and then we will reform parts of the system. But they're not stupid. Okay? Looking ahead and being like, okay, maybe it worked. Like, even if I'm only thinking from a pro-Jewish perspective, I literally don't care about how I F over outsiders or anything like that. Even if I only think from pro-Jewish perspective, even if I'm only thinking from a pro-Jewish perspective from one of these ultra-Orthodox communities that is living off of welfare, right? I still care about the future of the Jewish people.
Well, do you think, so is this an issue of
% of anti-Semitism in youth? This is a fucking problem, right? Especially among your best and longest term allies.
Well, so could this be then that the ADL isn't actually trying to like advocate for or fight for Jewish safety or protection, but rather they're experiencing mission creep and they're just blindly and without any bigger picture just reflexively going after anyone who say Jew bad, and then they just like,
well, if that is the case, then there needs to be some institutional Jewish system to punish them as people, not even as an organization, as individuals.
Like, all the donors to the ADL who are Jewish need to say, hey, knock it off. This is making it worse.
No. That's too hard to do. What you need is an external Jewish legal body, Jews love legal bodies, that is meant to hunt down these types of anti-Jewish crimes, e.g. crimes that lead to the Jewish community being less secure, that are being performed by individuals and organizations like the ADL, and publicly be able to say, this individual is committing these acts, which are demonstrably dangerous to the Jewish community at large. And that they should face X, Y, and Z punishment for it to be on good terms with the Jewish community going forwards. Likely fines or something like that. So let's go over like what the ADL said, just so you understand how they tried to frame this.
Yeah,
they said it was anti-Semitic to frame some Orthodox Jewish communities as welfare addicted.
But they are. Like, it seems like there are, it's well known that many Orthodox Jewish communities are kind of like literally built around leveraging welfare systems because they can. I don't blame anyone for, like, to a certain extent, if the system is that broken where you can exploit it that much, then it's, shame on the system.
Jews still pay more into the tax system than they disproportionately take out because there's so many rich Jews. So like, they're still useful to have around. They then said that, using tropes about Jewish insularity, greed / money, or dual loyalty, like go back to Israel comments in the video, but they were demonstrably exhibiting greed and dual loyalty in the video. And these Orthodox Jewish communities going back to Israel and committing fraud against other Jews would demonstrably fix the problem in the United States of this being a legitimate grievance, right? Like, these are not, that's one of the coolest things about Israel. Jews have a place they can go if they're being a problem now, right? Other Jews even have a way to be like, okay, if this community is becoming too much of a problem in the United States and causing too many issues, then we can relocate them back to Israel, where at least they're only causing these negative externalities among other Jews. If people are wondering why I am so existentially interested, and that's what this video is me trying my best to come up with a solution to prevent what I see as extreme rates of anti-Semitism.
Yeah, and I want to highlight just what you pointed out at the very beginning, just the proportion of young people today who actively harbor anti-Semitic views because of this stuff that is happening now. And it's only going to get worse. And definitely this is the sign to take action. I get
By
that.
the way, if you're looking for other instances, if you're like, well, this is just one case, there's a crazy case. Have you heard about the East Ramapo Central School District in Rockland County, New York?
That's the one that guy went to visit, isn't it?
This wasn't the one that he got in trouble for.
Oh.
This was the one where an ultra-Orthodox population grew rapidly due to high birth rates, and their synagogue had them all vote in the local elections. And they ended up, even though they were a minority population, having control of the local school board. And when I say they were a minority, the local school district was 91 to 95% Black or Latino and served 9,000 students. They then began to cut all of the extracurricular and athletic activities. They then reduced kindergarten from full day to half day, ended summer school, cut business electives and professional development by 75%. They then tried to sell a school building to a Jewish yeshiva at under the cost of that building.
No, that's terrible. That's not a good look. That's not going to make you friends. That's really not going to make you friends. Oh my gosh.
This is one of the things where we need to be able to talk about this. Like they're playing within the rules of the system. But part of the way the system works is when somebody is playing within the rules, but being a bad actor, that they are able to be called out by citizen journalists. If elements of the Jewish community attempt to stop citizen journalism,
that's not playing by the rules. Yeah.
Existentially bad, because now that person is saying, to target these individuals, you have to go through all of us. And all of us means a lot of Jews that want nothing to do with this. And for those Jews, the bad actor that they need to target, and this is very important and very difficult in the way Jews typically react to this, is not like the worst actor here. The person who is most dangerous to the overall Jewish community is not the people doing this fraud. It is not the people taking control of the school districts. It is not the people selling the school buildings to yeshivas. It is the people trying to shut down the system from operating as it's intended to. It's the ADL. The ADL is at a level of magnitude existentially worse for the Jewish community because they are the ones who make this a problem for every Jew instead of just these Jews. Okay? The case I was talking about earlier was the case of Philip Essermorphs, a Miami Beach nursing home who did $33 million in fraud. Yeah, really bad.
That's impressive.
Yeah.
Wow. Okay. How? In what? Sorry, keep going.
Well, I mean, if you want to go into it, what he did. And no, Trump didn't fully pardon him, but he shouldn't have done anything for this guy. It's good for the Jewish community that this guy faced punishment, right?
Yes.
That this guy faced punishment before the Somalians did. Jews could go like, look, our community isn't receiving special treatment.
Yeah.
Don't then advocate explicitly for special treatment.
Yes.
Right? Mm-hmm. Prosecutors described him as driven by almost unbounded greed.
Yeah.
So what really got me more than him, because again, I don't really care what he did. He did something bad. The system caught him, like Somalians do something bad. The system catches him. It's when they then try to say, and now you have to arrest every Somalian if you want to arrest these Somalians, that it becomes existentially unworkable. Right? An alliance with the group becomes existentially unworkable.
Correct.
So specifically what happened is the organization is the Alphen Institute, a Chabad Levitic affiliated 501c3 nonprofit founded in 1981 by Rabbi Shalom Lipsker at the direct action of Lebov Rebbe. Its core mission is to provide religious, spiritual, educational, and advocacy for support for Jewish inmates in the United States, of which there are roughly 85,000. This is really, really, really bad, right? If you're an organization that is doing something like this, you need to be asking, their motto is no one alone, no one forgotten, right? Like, we don't leave our troops behind. We don't let our people face jail time. You need to be asking as an organization, like before you go after and try to free a guy like this, you need to be saying, okay, but did he actually hurt people? Did he actually do something bad? Because if he actually did, and I now say, you can't jail any Jew unless you jail all Jews, you now are a much bigger threat to the wider Jewish community than this guy was. And again, this is about thinking, and Jews can be like, oh, well, because of our traumas, we reflexively attempt to do X, Y, and Z. I understand that. Okay. But the problem is this pattern of behavior, and other groups don't do this. Catholics don't try to get people out of prison just because they're Catholics. Okay. The Protestants.
I thought when you described the organization, I figured it was like, well, we'll, provide you with visitors while you're in jail, serving time, like build community for you, or maybe like go in and provide education to people in jail and just do good PR for Jews in jail, but not like get you out. That surprises me that's what they
the
do.
core reason that this group did this, right, or they say they did this,
Okay.
is his father, Morris Esimus, an Orthodox rabbi and nursing home magnate, donated $65,000 to Alpha over several years, starting after his indictment, by the way, so only to work on his case. But the family has long supported Chabad causes. And Jared Kushner, who oversaw much of the clemency, has longstanding personal ties within these Chabad networks. Now, Chabad people who I have met have generally been pretty smart and forward thinking. They should have known how this was going to look, given how mad the right is right now over Somali stuff. They are, anyone involved in this, an existential threat to the Jewish community. They weren't able to think for 2 seconds, how mad is the American right now about the Somali case? How are they going to feel about this case? Right? And they didn't feel that way. They didn't have a fear about this because there's no Jewish institutional organization or anything that could have come out and been like, hey guys, do not do this right now. This is going to cause real damage to the Jewish community.
What if Jewish organizations never felt like they had
to go into the final thing here, which is how Jews historically handled this stuff, how they should handle this stuff in the future.
Though I do want to ask, what if Jewish organizations like these never thought they had allies on the right?
And a note here, when I'm like, when I was talking about like Jews being like, oh, well, historically we had this stuff and we just don't have it anymore. And trauma, sorry. Would you say stuff like, oh, trauma in our community, like we can't not do it, blah, blah, blah. I'm like, look, I understand it's hard to create institutions to change your culture, but Jews have done it before. You can do it again. And if you look at the rise and the speed of the rise of anti-Semitism, it is existential that you find a way to do it. This is not me ragging on the Jewish community. This is me saying Jews are useful allies for many reasons to me and my personal agenda. But you're also from the position of populations like this fertility rate was in Israel and this phenomenon in the United States and the rise of anti-Semitism in the US at an existential risk right now. If this continues, a 25% anti-Semitism rate, that could be 50, 60%. If it continues to rise at this rate in like 20 years, like you don't have time to deal with this. Okay.
Yeah.
You have people marching through American streets saying from the river to the sea. You need the other side that doesn't mind that stuff still in your camp. Okay.
Yeah.
Now to note here, you had organizations like the Kehillot, organized Jewish councils, and rabbinical courts, Beit Din, which actively provided and policed economic crimes against Gentiles. The motivation was practical self-preservation. If you committed fraud against Christians or a Christian government, obviously that could trigger pogroms or expulsions or even collective punishments. Examples include, so this is how they did it, fines or Sherman and shaming, repeated or notorious fraud, dishonest business practices and counterfeiting or overcharging non-Jews could result in monetary fines paid to the victim or the community, public shaming, or full sherem, a social and religious ban that was devastating. No one could do business with you, marry your kids, etc. Jewish legal codes and communal records from the period show that this was done precisely to deter action against their group. And Talmudic and medieval enforcement, the Talmud and later codes, e.g. Maimonides and Shal Arch, record Beit Din handled cases of theft and fraud from Gentiles. Stealing even trivial amounts from non-Jews as a Torah-level theft in practice, communities would impose severely strict penalties on Jews who performed even trivial fraud or misrepresentation against Gentiles. And they did this not because they wanted to protect Gentiles, but because they wanted to protect Jews.
Well, yeah, because they think even
As
communities
to
at that point did a lot of
why
Malcolm,
these
can you not
groups
hear me?
began to break down, a large part of this had to do with the Jewish Shabbatai Levi thing, and he basically destroyed the Jewish community for like a century. If you're not in the Jewish, like Judaism almost died like at the end of this period, and the rabbinic circles sort of lost a lot of their institutional power, and things began to fall apart. And a number of these organizations essentially weren't even able to pay the taxes that they owed to like the government, because the government was supposed to be handling stuff from them, and so they essentially fell apart. And that's bad when you still have Jewish organizations who attempt to protect every Jew. Any final thoughts, Simone?
I don't think you can hear me.
You're muted, by the way.
I'm not muted.
You're
the
muted
problem.
still. You're
I
still
know
very
I'm not muted. I'm actually not.
I can't hear
muted.
anything. Can't hear anything.
I know.
Can't
know.
hear anything.
I think it's
Unable to
something
unmute. It's okay if there's sound in the.
Look, I muted. I'm not
Okay,
muted.
still can't hear you.
It's a mic.
Do you think you're unmuted? Can you hear me?
I know I can hear you. Yeah.
Okay, come in here and give your final thoughts.
Well, I think actually I can be heard.
I have no idea what you're saying. You are completely muted.
I'll call you. Hold on.
Yes.
So my mic is being picked up in the recording. You just can't hear me for whatever reason from your computer. So
okay, I'll just let you talk then.
Yeah. I agree with you that this is really important to address. And I really hope that something can be done, but I feel like maybe things have gotten balkanized to the point where Jewish communities feel like they can't actually control this. Maybe I'm wrong.
I think you're wrong. I think from what I've seen, Jewish communities can adapt. They're not stupid. They at least realize the problem of growing anti-Semitism. And Jewish communities cannot control, or they can try to, but it's increasingly not working, because unfortunately they're using the tools that the wokes adopted, and now the woke tools work in reverse. They cannot control the actions of people outside their community, especially when they are genuinely becoming a threat to those external communities, right?
So basically, if a critical mass of influential Jewish leaders recognize that this is an existential threat to all Jewish communities, and that every time something like this gets planned, threatened, whatever, pulled, that immediately they all collectively descend upon this person and are like, this is not cool, undo right now. We're going to cut you
some
off.
form of actual punishment that is agreed upon wide scale through like inter-rabbinic courts. And again, the core thing that needs to be punished is not the fraud itself. It's the defense of the fraud.
Yeah, no, I agree with you. And it's really bizarre. Again, why was this terminated? Why did it ever end?
The courts?
People just got disorganized?
No, but basically they were too organized to the extent that they were in charge of like tax collection from the Jewish people on behalf of the governments that they were part of. And some of them got like shut down when they could no longer had the authority to collect those taxes anymore. So they basically became too bureaucratic and they broke down.
Okay. So yeah, basically a new practice has to begin, and a new precedent. And it would be better if it was a lightweight reflexive reaction to defensive bad actors instead of some complicated larger governing body, per my view then. Okay. Wow. I mean, I didn't know how egregious some of those cases were. And I fully welcome anyone. I mean, I think that many cases of welfare fraud could be construed as like white hat hacking. They're hacking the system. They're showing vulnerabilities.
And again,
the key thing to make it white hat is when the vulnerability is exposed, the vulnerability gets fixed. You caught me. We're good. Cat and mouse game continues. But like the whole point of a cat and mouse game is that when the cat finds the mouse, cat eats mouse. Mouse gone.
Yeah. You don't then say as the mouse, you have to eat all the mice if you want to eat this one mouse, because now you are a problem for all mice.
Well, I feel like the metaphor falls apart at that point. I see what you're saying. Yeah. Yeah. I think that maybe, as much as we didn't really talk about it, this issue also extends to the Somali community. I think that, for example, Ilhan Omar? Yeah,
It was a
Ilhan
huge problem
Omar.
for the Somali community,
Yeah,
but I don't care
because,
about
like,
the
they need to
Somali
be like,
community.
"We disavow this. This is disgusting." But, like, I think but your advice applies to all communities. Any community
Obviously,
that's like
yeah, I mean, obviously, it is the Somali community. The Somalians who defend the obvious Somalian fraudsters need to be punished more, like as a cultural strategy for survival, more than the fraudsters themselves.
yeah,
That
because the
is
fraudsters, it's easy to, like, write off anyone who did bad thing and be rid of them, but the ones who tried to defend that are the ones that put everyone at risk. Yeah.
yes,
I guess it's not too dissimilar from the Covenant of the Sons of Men, the AI alignment proposition you present, which is basically we attack anything that becomes an existential threat to all of our ability to be free, to exist. And this is a micro version of it. When you see someone is posing an existential threat, all bets are off. We drop what we're doing, we stop them, and then we can move forward once that threat has been dealt with. And that's what you're seeing here. And that's why you pay so much attention to it, because you are uniquely attuned to existential threats arising. And now you see it arising. Like, you didn't care about it when it was Somalians, because what investment do we have in that community? But when
yeah.
you
I
see
don't,
this happening with
I don't
Jewish
care what happens
communities,
to the
you're like,
Somalians. Like
we,
Somalians are
we don't
not
have any
part of my
association. We have
cultural
no
plan for the
investment. We
future.
have no, like, interest. We don't feel like they're going to take to the stars and whatever. They don't seem to be very involved with anyone who's not their own community.
They're not
Jews are
culturally
different.
aligned with me. I have no cultural similarities to them. I have a lot of cultural similarities to Jews.
Yeah.
Like, obviously, and Jews produce a lot of technology and economic benefits for the United States and have a lot of military strength, which is useful for our future plans if we stay
Yeah.
allies.
Yeah, I get it.
But so, like, obviously I care what happens to the Jew. Somalians are doing this too, but like I just then I'm like, okay, well then get rid of all the Somalians, right? Like if they're going to defend this, like, and at the rates that they're doing it at, like this, but it's a little different from the Somalis. So the Somalians, it looks like within some Somalian communities, it is the majority of the Somalian. It was something like 65% were on welfare or something like that. Within Jewish communities, it is actually an extreme minority that are these types of
I disagree.
ultra-Orthodox Jews.
I disagree because there are, like, some cities where the entire way of life is built upon this
Fraud.
kind of economic system.
Yeah.
So you're wrong about that. I think it may be even worse in some of these cities where, because, like, literally the entire economy runs off of those dynamics, which is why I was like, maybe this is an issue. Like, you can't be like, well, knock it off, guys, because it's literally like what do you want them to do? Like, they literally will do this to the death, I guess, because, like, they have no other way of making money. Now they all have, like, 9 kids. What are you gonna do? Like,
right. But I
off.
mean, we've and I point out here, when a Jew who's watching this is like, what do you mean your people just go out and shoot someone when they're one of your own people and they're screwing people over? What about the healthcare CEO? That was a white guy, right? Like the guy who shot him was a white guy. That's the American way, right? Like, the people know in our video, I was not against that. I was like, yeah, this guy's applying.
Yeah, I guess that's a very salient example of that form of justice. Yeah, that was at least, I don't know, it was an Italian, right, kid, and then I don't know what the United Healthcare.
Well, I mean, adopted American culture, right? I think that this the when somebody from our community is effing over our community and outsiders, deal with it.
I guess we could say that their shared culture was relatively affluent, educated American.
Yeah, the guy who did it was a affluent, educated, wealthy, like, kid who went to, like, boarding school and stuff like that, as far as I remember. Like, same basic cultural group, but it was that group policing itself.
Well, and the future is going to be self-policing, because government-based policing is not going to happen.
Well, and and because groups that don't police themselves, everyone is going to hate them, right? Like, as people begin to see people more as groups, right? Like, as your individual identity of your community gets larger, people are going to, like, I will say right now, within the techno-Puritan community, that is how we should police, as extremely aggressively as possible.
And it's not just about policing, it's also about your reputation as a culture, and as we'll say, possibly even like a techno fiefdom, right? Like in the future, let's say if many mainstream governments fall apart, different contingents and groups are going to, like Venetian city-states, trade with each other, engage in business with each other, or not, like isolate each other from each other. And if your community builds a reputation for exploitation, you will not be able to do trade. Like everyone's going to want to work with the Mormons. Everyone dunks on the Mormons, but they're all going to want to work with the Mormons.
That's a good point.
And I think the problem with building reputations like these is people are in the future, when everyone just runs off of cultural stereotypes and reputations, be like, well, I'm not going to work with the Jews. Whereas in the past, when there was this policing system that you described, it was like, well, sure, I go to the Jews to get like money lending services and these other things because they're trustworthy for that. They self-police. Like I can predict that they will provide the service as expected. And I think that that's the thing, is you have to think about what cultural stereotypes you are going to cultivate for your group in a post world police environment, because that's what we're entering with demographic collapse, right?
Exactly. And it can be done. That's the other thing. Just throwing up your hands and being like, no, Jews could never fix this problem. You used to self-police. You used to have institutional solutions.
Well, and this was when they operated in a system of no world
higher
police.
Threat.
And different
threat.
Groups needing to interact with each other and trade with each other and interact in a low trust environment. We're entering a very low trust future, meaning that you need to cultivate high trust. And if you defend bad actors, that's destroying it. So now I get the bigger picture even more. And I appreciate you covering this, even though we're totally getting in trouble for this.
Yeah, well, because there are the bad actors out there, and they are pervasive within Jewish communities. But we are signaling this not because we want to hurt these communities, but because we're trying to shock them into like, you actually, if somebody as phileo-Semitic as me is like, this is actually a problem, guys, then it's actually a problem.
Yeah.
And it's not like a problem that like you can scratch your chin about and be like, that's a very interesting problem. It's like, if you care about the future of the Jewish people, you care about finding a solution to this problem.
Yeah. Well, I'm going to go get the kids and make dinner. And
what am I doing for
if
dinner
we were
tonight?
your Burmese mint chicken.
Burmese mint chicken.
If ever we were criticized for being the weird husband and wife who speak to each other in different rooms, it's just highlighted now by the fact that we're like, I'm talking on a phone. Hello.
Oh my gosh.
So bad. I don't work out your mic because
it's not my mic problem. It's clearly a StreamYard problem because StreamYard's picking up my mic fine.
I see that StreamYard's picking up your mic. And do you see that it's picking up my mic? Because it is.
No.
The green dots be moving.
We'll figure it out. I love you so much, Simone.
I love you too.
You're amazing. And I actually would not at all be surprised given the number of Chabad, because that seems to be the organization that would be best able to fix this, Jews that watch our show, that one of them is going to be like, yeah, reviving one of those institutions is probably a pretty good idea. Like, let's get on that. Because, if you bring that idea to the right people with the right packaging and you're able to set something like that up, that's also a path to power for you and institutional power for you, right? Like it's not a bad play. It's not like a cross that you have to die on. It's a very useful thing to set up.
I know. It's just, politicking be politicky. It's not that easy, but this is an existential threat to your point. So I get it. Anyway,
yeah.
The kids are being
all right. Love you.
Suspiciously quiet. So
all right. Bye.
I can't get over Torsten seeing Wannabe by the Spice Girls, a music video of it. The OG music video. And then coming up to me and being like, Mommy, this is a song about friendship.
He said that?
Yeah.
This is a song about friendship.
About friendship.
If you want to be my lover, you gotta get with my friends.
Yeah.
Which is also
it really is a song about friendship. It's true.
It is a song about friendship. Yeah.
No one is going to meet that specification for being
what's
your lover.
funny is that it is still true for like progressive culture. Like, you want to have sex with someone, you got to have sex with their friends. Like, that's the way those communities work these days.
Oh God, yeah. If you have the poly read of wannabe
they're
by
all
Spice Girls.
poly.
Yeah,
If you want to be my
no, that's
love,
like
you wanna
that's
get
like
me
the
as my
Dallas
friend?
poly community that we knew, where it was just this like matriarchy where they would switch out studs.
No, so she's talking about, this was really interesting. So, like, as Simone and I had mentioned, like earlier, when we were more progressive, we were like technically open to sleeping with other people. We just didn't really indulge in it, but we like hung out with these communities. And so we were very familiar with the various poly communities in the areas where we lived.
They're some of the most fun people. Like, typically, if you meet someone who's poly, they're probably also pretty smart and doing some interesting work. I don't know what to say.
Them. I mean, this is the ones who we met who were like that. Keep in mind that we sort of filter who we meet, and it depends on the area. The poly people I've met in like San Francisco and like Portland and stuff, they've all like total burnouts, a lot of them.
I don't know. As far as I know, the people I know in the Bay Area who are poly are some of the smartest and highest achieving people. So
I also know some smart ones and stuff like that, but they're not on the typical poly dating scene. Whereas the poly dating scene in Dallas was actually more like smart, high agency people with really good jobs.
Yeah.
But it was incredibly interesting because it was basically run by a cabal of very attractive women who just controlled who was invited to the parties, who got to do what, who, and they would just like, and I think that that's one of the reasons why so high status, because these women, they approached it very much with sort of like a backwoods, because Texas is part of, specifically Dallas is often seen as the capital of the greater Appalachian region, even though it's not in the Appalachians, because it's the largest city and economic hub that's in that cultural region. And they approached it very sort of ruthlessly and economically, which is really interesting, where they're like, well, we're hot women, we can control access to sex. If other hot women decide to become poly in the Dallas area, they basically join our cabal, and we will use this cabal to ensure that only really competent, successful, and attractive guys are sleeping with anyone in the poly space.
Yeah, actually, that's a really good point. Is all the guys we met that were in that space were very pro-social, whereas you often get a lot of bad actor dudes, not universally, obviously, but there are more bad actor dudes in other poly circles who are just exploitative and messed up and like manipulative. And these guys were just like, just kind,
because
nice
the dynamics
guys.
are entirely different. You look at the poly scene in San Francisco, and it's like super toxic because it's basically a bunch of like effective altruists. Watch our episode on the EA to whore pipeline, who attempt to groom young women who first enter the movement with like logic, like, well, if it gives me pleasure and it gives you pleasure, how could it be wrong, right? And it begins to look cool to these young women, and they get into it. And then older women in the space come up to them and they're like, hey, I think this guy is using you. And then they're like, oh, this older woman's just trying to mate guard, like, and because that's what the guys will say or something.
Yes,
like
they won't
that.
listen. Yeah, even when they try to protect each other.
The guys have moved up in this community through some other means, like they've gotten high level positions and like that's some effective altruist org, so it's hard to kick them out or something like that. And so it creates this dynamic where you get bad actors all over the place. And because the community isn't ruthless about expelling people.
Yeah.
In the Dallas scene, if a guy tried to say, because most of the guys in the Dallas scene are like finance bros and stuff like that, tried to say something like, oh, well, she's just mate guarding this, attractive woman who's higher status than you in the community telling you not to get with me. That woman would then be like, okay, now you guy who just said that, like it goes through the whisper network really fast. You're not invited.
It was kind of like The Bachelor. You
You're
get handed
put
a
on a
rose
list.
or something. Yeah.
And everyone knows not to engage with you. So it's weird that in this one scenario, like matriarchy seems to keep the entire system stable.
Yeah, it was so cool. It was so weird and cool.
Matriarchy and hypergamy, keeping a system stable in a non-traditional structure. Okay, whatever.
Yeah.
That was fascinating. I wonder if it's still stable or if it's basically collapsed at this point.
I know. Well, some of the people in it that we had known had moved away, moved to other cities, gone on to become parents and stuff. So I doubt that they're still that involved in it, but
yeah,
I don't know. And I think I got the impression when we were hanging in that circle too, that there were a lot of really new entrants who were just young and kind of having that experience for a while, and you kind of get through it. Like maybe for some people being poly is this postgraduate equivalent of being briefly lesbian in college, and then you kind of get it out of your system and move on and enter committed relationships. I don't know.
Yeah. Oh, hold on. I need to ask a question. You can keep talking.
I also love watching our kids dance to Gangnam Style. That is just god tier entertainment. So good. But yeah. Trying to think if there's anything that I haven't told you yet about my trip to Austin. I do have to say, I really like the network of people there. You know, like I wish I could just tap into that social network all the time. That and like hang around Lighthaven in Berkeley, I think
Yeah.
it would be lovely. But I don't want to fly out to these places, and I don't want to live in either of those places. So this is the price we pay. It's just us and the chickens over here, and that's okay.
All right.
We're just about to head back from Austin, where we filmed a roundtable with Chris Williamson and two other demographers, Lyman Stone and documentarian Stephen Shaw. And I can't wait to get back and get home to the kids. It was good to be in Austin, but I really like our home in Valley Forge. It's pretty great there. And travel just isn't as fun as it used to be. I don't know. The appeal has worn off. So I'm glad I was able to make it out. I'm glad I was able to do it all from one backpack for the two of us. Because you got a lot of stuff. All the formula, all the diapers, there's a lot there. And the elevator in our hotel broke this morning. So there was hauling this car seat down 11 floors, which was not my favorite moment. Yeah, it was not the best, but that's over. And the roundtable, which was supposed to go for 2 hours, I think went for 4. So hopefully that means it went well. Who knows? But it was really, really fun to have that conversation. And I love that we get to do work that has us talking with really interesting, fun people, and that yields opportunities like these. Because it's a perk. It's not comfortable, but it's interesting.